The majors in CSGO, these three tournaments that we're having every year, 250k prize pool, 100k first place, supported by Valve, kind of building up to like world championship level events, aren't everything in CSGO. They're the biggest tournaments, they're the most important tournaments, but that doesn't mean that the other tournaments don't matter. Now, I made a video along these lines in League of Legends, actually, but I want to do a separate one for CSGO, because in CSGO, I can actually use different examples, including many CS-specific examples, and we have a much wider circuit, so there's a lot more room to give examples. And crucially, I can go back into 1.6 and show you how in history, some of the notions, some of the fan kind of trends of opinion now didn't hold back then. Actually, these aren't ideas that have a lot of substance to them. These are new fans thinking these things up. So essentially, the reason why I want to address this topic is because I've noticed people who are fans of teams that have done particularly well in majors look at that as the reason to why that's the best team or that's the greatest team. And they think if you say that another team is great who don't have the same record at the majors, that you must be hating on that team, that you must purposely be being biased and blind against it. When in reality, if we actually look at the totality of what happens in the scene and the circuit, it's actually those kinds of fans who are being ignorant. Often they haven't really thought about the other tournaments and what their relevance is and how they're significant and where they fit into the puzzle. It's easy to look at the majors and go, well, they're the biggest, they're the matter the most. Yes, but there's more subtlety. What happens after that? What does the second best level of tournaments rank for? And how does that affect something? It's not as simple as just looking at this one and going, right, well, that's the best team. And so some teams are extremely good, but unless you know why they're good, it doesn't count to just say they're good. Your opinion doesn't matter that much. So there's two classic examples of fan opinions now which showcase this kind of very cloudy, misinformed thinking. So the first one is the people who say, NiP is by far the best team of 2014. It's not even debatable because they made the final of all three majors. That's it. They don't want you to consider any other tournament. You don't look at any other tournament. They're the three most important tournaments. They made the final of all three. No one else made the final of all three, and they won one of them. Therefore, they're the best. It's over. It's not even close. If you even think that's debatable, you hate NiP, you're a fanboy of the other team, and you're blind, and you're obviously trying to skew the facts, and you're biased. No, that's a ridiculous statement, as I'll unpack. In terms of specific results at majors, people take the result of the major, and they say, well, that was the most important game. Yes. Therefore what? Therefore that's all that matters. The other meetings between those teams don't matter. That's the only one that really matters. That if they were the best, they would have got it done there. They would have won there because that's when it's the most important, and the winners win when it's most important. They have all these cloudy sets of logic. So to give a NiP example again, NiP beat Virtus Pro with their brand new lineup with Makalele in the semi-final of DreamHack Winter. Therefore, in the mind of the fans who say these sorts of things, NiP, obviously better than Virtus Pro, should be ranked higher in the world than Virtus Pro. And if you say that Virtus Pro is better or is better right now, you're obviously a hater. You're ignoring the most important and really the only evidence you should consider, and it's ridiculous. So let's actually talk about, first of all, let's talk very briefly, because I don't want to go too far into it, about whether there is even a debate over who the best team of 2014 is. There is definitely a debate over who the best team of 2014 is. Now, first and foremost, this is where it gets murky, because personally, when I talk about teams, I don't like to talk about teams that have changed players. I think that makes it very problematic, because eventually it comes down to like asking weird questions like, well, how many players have to change before a team's radically different? Like, for example, Titan changed all their players in their team except one over the course of the year. Only Existence was in the team at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. Every other team, every other player went out of the team and other players came in. So do we just count Titan's results all the way and say that that was one team? And so if Titan had done terribly at one part, but then at the end, say for the last 6 months, they'd have gotten an LDLC type lineup and won all the events, that say they had a Fnatic type run, would they now be the best team, but you'd still count the first ones? That's very problematic to me. I realize for a team of the year, people might want to do that. Personally, I don't do it. So if I'm examining without that, if I'm just examining 5-man lineups, when you had these 5, what did you accomplish with them? And judging off that with the other team of the year. Because the reason is, like I say, if you're allowed to change one player, it's true, one player won't change as much. Maybe one player you'll still have the same identity, you just change a little bit. Okay, but then are we allowed to change 2 players? And if we're allowed to change 2 players, why not 3? And where does the number get? It becomes very murky. So first and foremost, I'll just address this initially if we're talking about just 5-man lineups that were the same the whole time. So let's take NiP's 5-man lineup. So basically every event minus DreamHack Winter. And let's take Fnatic's 5-man lineup, so every event from Gfinity, which was in August, on through the rest of the year. Now, first of all, the very fact that I'm going to now make the case that Fnatic could have been the best team of the year, again, it's on your own criteria, it's not for certain, but I think a stronger case could be made, shows that they obviously had a spectacular August to December, because that's only August, September, October, November, December, 5 months with that 5-man lineup, versus NiP having the same 5-man lineup for 10 months. So twice as long Nip has, and yet it's even debatable that Fnatic was better in terms of what they accomplished. That alone shows you that they must have had an incredible period of time. So let's look at what Nip accomplished with their 5-man lineup. They finished runner-up at the DreamHack CSGO Invitational. They finished second at EMS Katowice, the first major. They won Copenhagen Games. They finished second at Star Series 9. They finished second at Esports SM, the Swedish Only Cup. They won DreamHack Summer. They won Iron Gaming. They won ESL Cologne, and then every other result is really bad. Like they were 5th to 6th at ESCA. They were 5th to 8th at Gfinity. They bombed out of ESWC in the group stage. They bombed out of DreamHack Stockholm in the group stage. They didn't qualify for any of the other LAN events. The rest of the results terrible. So let's just ignore that and look at the good results for now. Now then, go over to Fnatic. They finished semi-final Gfinity. They runner-up ESL 1 Cologne, a major. They won Star Series 10. They made the semi-finals of DreamHack Stockholm. They won Face It 2 season LAN finals. They won ESWC. They won Fragbite Masters season 3 finals. They won ESCA season 17 LAN finals. And then they finished round of 8 DreamHack. And that's it. That's their period with this lineup. Now, just judging these 5-man lineups first, I think you can definitely make a case that Fnatic is better. Not by a massive amount, but by enough that in my criteria, I would put them as better. So yes, the majors count the most. So Nip's team has 2 majors. They had one they finished second at and one they won. So of the best events, they have the best record there. Fnatic, their majors is they only finished second at one. So they're lagging on the majors count there, which is the most points. But then you go to the tournaments below that are still like fully international and crucially have really good teams there. Now in terms of bigger ones, Face It Season 2 LAN Finals, Fragbite Masters 3, ESL, ESWC, and Gfinity G3. And let me see, anything else? And maybe ESA 17, so maybe 5 tournaments they're all varying degrees of the second tier type tournament. All international tournaments with good teams there, some elite teams crucially. And yeah, overall, good results there. So we've got 5 teams there for them. For NIP, we've got DreamHack CSGO Invitational because it was 4 teams that were 4 of the strongest at the time. We've got Copenhagen Games, obviously, as an international tournament. That's very solid. We've got Star Series 9. I give that more credit than all the other Star Series. So, for example, the one that counts for Fnatic doesn't count because they only had a couple of good teams there and no elite teams. Whereas actually this one had a bunch of the elite teams. Had Titan, had Virtus.pro, Navi obviously turned out to be good later on. That was a very strong one. So we'll count that. Star Series there. DreamHack Summer obviously counts. So we've got 4 so far. And that's it. So they've got less tournaments on the secondary level where they finish top 4. Now then, of these titles, overall, Fnatic won more of those. Nip only won, 2 of those tournaments that were at the secondary level. So they won 2 of those tournaments at the secondary level. Fnatic went to 5 of their tournaments at the secondary level, and they won 4 of them. They won 4 of the fights. They won twice as many at the secondary level. Remember, Nip won a major, and Fnatic only finished second, and Nip finished second. So Nip had the edge on the majors. Fnatic have a pretty considerable edge on the secondary tournaments. Now the third level of tournaments. Let's go down one. So for Nip, we're going to say... Actually, for Nip, they haven't got any because the Esports SM is a Swedish-only tournament and they didn't even win it. So I'll give them like 10 points for some minor amount. And Iron Gaming only had Navi, which are decent. They're a good team, top 4, top 5 team. But that's it. Nothing else in the whole field. The whole field's a joke. The tournament was nothing. So it's very hard to give them anything for those. So those are the worst tournaments and they're worse than every tournament Fnatic played in. Now, Fnatic's third-tier tournaments, they've got Star Series 10, where it was just them and Navi and the whole rest, all that sort of people. They won that. Okay, they won it, even though it was a small one. Still not that many points there. What else? And that's it, basically. And then DreamHack Stockholm, I should have mentioned DreamHack Stockholm, actually. So in that case, Fnatic had 6 tournaments that were like international competition, and they won 4 of them. And they placed top 4 at 6. So you can see on the secondary tier, Fnatic actually murders Nip. On the third tier, Fnatic won a small tournament, Nip won the Iron Gaming a second. So let's say that's like almost a wash, even though still Fnatic's is better because it had Elrez, Zad, Navi. Overall, I'd say roughly slight edge there to Fnatic. So slight edge on the third tier, big edge on the second tier. Not a big lag. They did not win a major. That's significant. But not like a massive one. They still made the second, so that counts as well. So Nip basically won a major. So a solid result there. Oh, on these results, you can definitely make the case. Then you add in like how many top 4s in a row. Like Fnatic had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 top 4s in a row. What a great streak of consistency. You dominated the game. You not only won, but you dominated. And you look at how the teams won. It's not just the placing. How did they win? Nip won their major in the closest fashion I've ever seen anyone win a major. The least amount of domination you could ever have. Meanwhile, when Fnatic won, in fact, Nip dominated no tournaments this year. Even DreamHack Summer, they got taken close by Hellraisers. Copenhagen Games, tough games against Virtus Pro, tough games against Dignitas. Fnatic dominated Season 2 LAN Finals, ESWC and Fragbite Masters dominated. These were, Fragbite Masters Season 3 especially, and ESWC were some of the most dominant tournaments of the whole year. Just incredible form. Even the final of ESEA 17, which they hadn't dominated the tournament up to that point, but in the final they just go 4-0 on maps and wreck Virtus Pro, who's the top 3 team in the world. So overall, in terms of domination at the results, which Fnatic already had the edge on, domination's way on the Fnatic side of things. And then consistency on the Fnatic side of things, streak on the Fnatic side of things, even if you now add in the other tournaments. So all Nip gets to add is just the second at DreamHack, which is good. That's much better than the Dream. That puts them ahead again in the majors. But now in terms of Fnatic, we have to add in, they finished 3rd at the CSGO Invitational with their old lineup. What else did they do? They won the Esports SM over Nip. So again, not that much, but they still won it. So it's more than Nip's version. Add that in. They bombed DreamHack Summer. Copenhagen Games, they finished top 8, so nothing particularly special. EMAS Katowice, top 8 again, nothing special there. Yeah, that's about it. So they get not much. Nip gets a major. Even then, it still doesn't just throw it entirely and Nip say, oh, they've won completely. Even then, it's still debatable. Then you still have to ask them, like, Fnac's still definitely more dominating. All these other factors there. I still think a case can be. The point I've made here is, you can see how I've broken it down. It doesn't matter which side you now come down. If you can't now come down, you decide Nip with a better team, and overall you think the majors count for more. You can see how I broke it down there in different factors, like making tiers of events, and then asking not only what quality of event is this, what prestige does it have, but what teams were actually playing, how good were the teams that were playing, how good was the performance of the team that won the tournament, therefore how dominating was it, how much consistency did they have going forwards? All these different factors come into play deciding who is the best and who is the top team. It's not just, well, did they win DreamHack Winter? Let me check here. Yes, therefore they are the best. Wait a minute, isn't there more factors and subtlety to it? No, they won, therefore the best. Like, it doesn't work like that. That's an ignorant point of view. The reason why I bring this up is because kind of the Fnatic versus the Nip thing, where Nip had the better results at some big majors, but not that many second-tier results to really qualify being the best. Meanwhile, Fnatic, with a team who were able to dominate the last part of the year, minus the major, and still have a second at a major before that, and still have top 4 streak of 7 tournaments or something, that domination over the last 5 months only, but very impressive dominance, reminds me of a scenario that actually happened in 2007, where in 2007, the general consensus among fans and experts is actually that the team of the year was the team that did the domination rather than the team that did better at the majors. So what happened was in 2007, the 2 best teams overall was Fnatic, the team that had like Forest, Khan, DSN, Inns, Archie, and the Swedish team. And then you had Pentagram, which was Neo, Taz, Cuban, Lord, Luke. 2 very famous lineups. Now, what happened was, in the first part of the year, the guys from Pentagram, in the first 2 majors of the year, so the 3 majors that year was the first IEM title, the ESWC, and WCG finals. Those were the 3 majors over the year. So at the IEM championship, now you have to realize, this is something as a side point that I'll one day talk about in terms of majors in his CS history, because I think that's one that should be excluded by my criteria, because it wasn't fully international. You could only play for European, actually, because of the way the qualification system worked online. So it was only limited to European teams. So to me, that one shouldn't actually be considered a major, because all true majors are like international. In theory, you could qualify if you're from almost anywhere, so if you're from Brazil, from China, whatever. But anyway, they managed to, what happened was, in February of that year, the Pentagram team, the Poles, came second at SHG Open, which was like a decent medium-sized tournament, but even then didn't have like every top team, but it was like a medium-sized tournament, second tier. They finished second at SEC, which was the European version of the World Cyber Games, European-only teams. So, okay, silver medal is pretty decent. They won the first major, IEM 1 finals, and then they won ESWC. So they've won 2 majors, finished top 2 4 times overall, and second at 2 of the secondary tier events. That's their 4 significant results they had that whole year. Now, by the scale of the other people, remember, there's only 3 majors. They won 2 of them. Well, by the logic of everyone else, it's over, guys. They've won the 2 that matter the most. They must be the best team. There's not even any grounds on which the other team could be the best. So overall, 2 majors, two titles in general, which are the two majors, and 4 top 4 finishes. That's their year. Now let's look at what Fnatic did here. And by the way, I'll start out by saying this. Fnatic won 0 majors. So again, you probably think, well, how if they won 0 majors and the other one won 2, how could you possibly make a case for it? Watch how I break it down. So in March of that year, Fnatic went to the same tournament, IEM Season 1 Finals, and they came 3rd. Then in April, they went to NGL 1 Season 2, which was a tournament that was kind of like Star Ladder, like you qualified online. But then back then, like the earlier Star Ladders in CSGO, it used to be pretty stacked, actually. It used to be like the top 2 or 3 or 4 teams in the world used to go to those. Fnatic finished 2nd at that one. That was actually the one where they lost to the Finns, Lopus and those guys. Then they went to WSVG China, which actually, admittedly, this was a very weak event. This would be like a tier 3 or probably tier 3 overall, because they had some strong Chinese teams there, but it was only Chinese teams in Fnatic, and they finished 2nd there. In July, they went to ESWC, the second major of the year. They finished 3rd again, 3rd at 2 majors now. They went to Game Goon right after, which was a tier 2 event, but it was very stacked. It had all the super sick teams at this, and they won that event. And then they went to WEG E-Stars, which was like an invitational type event. Like it had MIBR, and it had a Chinese team, and it had a Korean team. So, okay, like tier 2 bordering on tier 3, but with the best teams you could have for a tier 3, sort of. That's why I'd almost put it in a tier 2. They won that event. Then they went to NGL 1 Season 3, the 3rd season of it. Again, top teams there. They won that. Then they went to Wonderbase, which was basically SK Gaming, a top elite level team, the top 4 team in the world. But after that, only Swedish people. So again, we'll put that sort of tier 3, but with good teams, because usually you don't have SK a tier 3. They won that. Then they went to IEM 2 Los Angeles, which was a really solid tier 2 event with lots of really good teams there, and they won that. So at the end of the year, they had like 5 tournaments they'd won. So 0 majors, but they'd finished top 3 at both of the majors, at 2 of the majors rather. They'd won 5 titles in total, and in total they had 9 top 4 finishes. Now then, their top 4 finishes are not quite the same as the other top 4 finishes of the other team. So even if I take some of them away, so let's say, for example, even if I was super generous to the polls and I took WSVG off the table, I took Wonderbase off the table, and I took WEG off the table, that would still be, take the 3 off, so that would still be 6. So that would still be 6 top 4 finishes as opposed to the 4 that the polls had. But then I have to add in the 2 tier 3 or whatever, or the 3 tier 3 rather, at least at a level below. And so you've still got the 6 and then 3 below that, and okay performance at majors overall. And so overall, remember, you add in the streak of big tournaments they were winning towards the end, and they were winning very legit tier 2 tournaments. They were the most dominant team towards the end. They were the most feared team. They were dominating in dominant fashion. They were winning in great fashion, where some of those ones the polls won, they never really blew people out of the water. They had some good results, but in general, they weren't smashing the tournaments. And so at the end of the year, the polls had really only had this period where they'd done well, and it was mainly just the majors. And then overall, Fnatic had everything else and every other factor except okay results at majors, and they didn't win them. And so the consensus of my experts from that year, go and ask people like Lopus, etc., and other people who were around, was we said Fnatic were the team of the year. They were the best team of 2007. So I hope that, again, by breaking it down, you see the nuances that go on here. I'll give you a sports example finally to end on. And this is the same sports example I gave in the League of Legends video, if you saw that one, so you don't have to listen to this if you don't want. Basically, in 2014, this year, at the end of the year, Nadal was ranked number 3 and Federer was ranked number 2. And yet at the 4 majors, Nadal won the French Open, he won a major, he made the final of the Australian Open, 2 finals of majors there, and then the others you can forget about. Now, Federer made the final of Wimbledon. He won 0 majors. He made the final of Wimbledon. So just on finals alone, Nadal's got 2 finals to 1, and he won 1. And in terms of high finishes at majors, Federer made the semis of the Australian Open and the semis of US Open. So even in terms of 2 semis and a final, doesn't beat a final and a win. That doesn't beat on the major level. So in terms of majors, Nadal definitely outperformed him. It should have been the better player, right? It should have been higher in the rankings. No, because what happened was, on the second tier of tournaments, called the ATP 1000 in tennis, there's 9 of them over the year, Nadal only managed to win 1 and make the final of 2 others. That was his best performance overall. Meanwhile, Federer won 2, so he's won twice as many of those 9 second-tier tournaments, and then he made the final of 4 others. So he was so overwhelmingly better there that it made up the gap in the majors, and he was the second-ranked player. And you can see, if you look at the way that's broken down, it is reasonable. Again, the quality of the players at these second ones, crucially, like when I was fair and trying to give characterizations of those other tournaments of Fnatic and of Pentagram and then the CSGO examples of how can we really rank these tournaments based on who was there and the quality of the tournament. In the same way, these 9 tournaments below, in tennis, it's the ideal because they have all the good players there essentially. So tournaments with similar level quality to the majors, he's actually doing way better. And so as a result, he was better. So again, don't be ignorant and pretend like the majors are all that matters. That usually, to me, this isn't a hard and fast rule because obviously someone really could think otherwise, but unless you express it in these manners, like, well, I looked at the domination, I thought this aspect, if you really just say something as glib as, well, Nip finished better at majors than everyone else, therefore they're the best, that suggests to me that really is all the thought you've put into it. Therefore, you might not even have watched the tournaments, you might not understand how good the teams were there, you might not understand how to rank tournaments in terms of what means what and what should be weighted, you might not even understand what the relative value of majors are. You're taking majors and putting them too far above as though like a major's worth like 7 minor events. No, a major's worth like 2 to 3 minor events maybe. And so in this particular scenario, and then some of them, if you didn't even win the major, that's definitely not better than winning 3 medium tournaments with the same teams there. That's a ridiculous scenario. And so that sort of ignorance, unfortunately, gets in the way of proper analysis. And people can do it if they want, but I thought I'd break down for people who are really interested in the topic how you're supposed to assess these teams and what a reasonable kind of criteria to break it down with is.